Hello, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of an interesting video. Recently, Nick Claxton has been in trade rumors, a lot of trade rumors, and it has been reported that the Nets have been searching the market for potential suitors for Nick Claxton. And the reason for this, because some people will be wondering why, because he's pretty decent. The reason is because another young center in Day'Ron Sharpe has emerged as a very capable NBA player, albeit in his first season. So what we're going to be doing is taking a look at both players and seeing basically who's the better fit, who offers more, who's more suitable to the team, all of the above. Anyway, drop a like and subscribe if you do enjoy this. Anyway, let's begin. First and foremost, let's take a look at the surface level type stuff. Day'Ron Sharpe, coming out of college, was a much bigger player in terms of weight. Nick Claxton was a bit more of a skinnier type guy, and I mean, to this day, even though Day'Ron's been in the league for 1 year and Claxton has been in the league for 3, Day'Ron's probably still bigger than Nick Claxton. But we look at the stats, and Day'Ron's averaging 6 points, 4 boards, and pretty much no assists in about, I'd like to say, 14 minutes per game. No, this is in 11 minutes per game. And he's shooting the ball at about 58%, which is pretty decent, on about 4.5 shot attempts. Yeah, so not too bad there. And in terms of free throws, he's at 58%. But he has been much better recently. I think today he hit about, all 4 of his free throws. And he hit a couple last game as well without a miss. So it may seem like he's starting to find his feet in that area. We look at Nick Claxton in 2021, or this season. He's averaging 9 points, 5 rebounds, and an assist in, I'd like to say, 22 minutes. So obviously he's getting a bit more game time because he is starting. And he's shooting the ball about 65% or 66% on the year. But his free throws are at about 61%. But his free throws overall in his career have been sitting at about 53% from the free throw line. So not ideal. But if we look at what both players have been offering, one really telling stat is that even though Day'Ron's only played, 14 or so games, I believe, he has scored 20 points in a game. It's 18 games or 19 games, by the way, but he has scored 20 points in a game before, and it was recently against Chicago. He's had a very good run in the last 5 or 6 games. They put him in the starting lineup, and he's shown a few things that I don't think people saw coming. Obviously, the offensive capabilities. Nick Claxton did not show that in his rookie season. He's never actually scored 20 points, Nick Claxton. And Day'Ron was able to do it in, his 15th NBA game. And it was against a decent opposition in Chicago. Vucevic is the center for Chicago. At least he was in that game. And Day'Ron basically taught him a lesson. If we look at NBADraft.net, which basically shows, I guess a preview for the player, what you are sort of expecting from them in the NBA, or what to expect from them. Day'Ron Sharpe, has been touted as one of the best rebounders, if not the best rebounder in the class. Just, a throwback big man, I guess, is something you could call him. Good interior shot creation. That's talking about like hook shots, shoulder jumpers. You're seeing that in there. Offensive rebounding percentage was the highest as well. And he has some ball handling skill, which is something that, we've seen in, the brief patch of games he's played. He's been able to facilitate, and there was one pass which I didn't know he had in his kit bag. I think it would have been a few games ago now, but he was just able to flick it behind him straight to the target. Not only do you have to have precision in that scenario, but you also need to have the vision to actually see that in your peripheral vision. And, he was able to do that. So he's been very good there. Ball handling, not so much. We haven't seen too much of that, but he hasn't been afraid to do it. Go off the dribble and try beat a defender. So he's been very good in that area. If we compare that to Nick Claxton, who I guess has more potential in terms of, venturing outside of the paint and taking jumpers, he's shown a bit more ambition in that regard over his 3-year stint in the NBA. But the offensive ceiling isn't as high. We haven't really seen an offensive explosion until this season, where he's, put together some, pretty consistent run of games where he's scored at least 10 points in these games, which is a good sign, but it took him a very long time. Keep in mind that he was injured for quite a large portion of his first 2 seasons in the NBA. But, I'd argue that Day'Ron Sharpe has shown a bit more versatility in his offensive game, even though Day'Ron does a lot of his work inside the paint. Now, if we look at rebounding and stuff like that, Nick Claxton is naturally he's a less heavy guy. He weighs less, and he's going to get pushed around a little bit more. Day'Ron, I've noticed, and I think a lot of people would have noticed, that these NBA centers that have had, 5, 6, 7 more years and in the NBA, they're sort of scared if Day'Ron's in the paint. He is a presence. Nick Claxton, not so much, because you can push him around. You can sort of afford to attack him, because, there's a possibility that he will get muscled out of it. Offensive rebounding wise, we've seen Day'Ron with way more capability in that regard as well over Nick Claxton. What Nick Claxton gives you that Day'Ron doesn't is some very good defense in pretty much every area. The switchability is real. He's got a lot of length, very long arms, so point guards can't shoot over him. Centers, I don't know why centers would be outside at the 3-point line at all times, but Claxton can do that. So that really helps our team, especially if we want to run out a small ball lineup. Claxton isn't even that small, and he can't really shoot the 3-ball well. But in terms of defending, him and KD as a 4 and 5, it's going to be very hard for teams to get shots up over them. You probably have to target someone like a Kyrie Irving or a James Harden in a switch if you want to get easy buckets, because obviously we know they're smaller. Even Patty Mills, who's been exploited a lot. I think another thing about Claxton is that he's very agile as well. And he can, I've seen a couple instances over his career where he is not afraid to just bring the ball up from the half court and just, go straight downhill. No hesitation, full confidence in himself. He won't pass it off, and he'll back his ability. And he's done that a few times. He probably doesn't do it enough. And it's sort of difficult when you have players on your team like James Harden with very high usage rates. You can't really maximize that. But yeah, that's another thing that Claxton offers that Day'Ron probably doesn't. Day'Ron's been very good as a presence defensively, but in terms of getting, pushing the pace in transition, you're not going to see him absolutely bolting down the floor. He's not as fast. So I think that's also a little bit of a problem in terms of defense, because he won't be able to keep up. In a way, I feel like defenders will be able to blow by him much easier than Claxton, who's got, pretty decent lateral quickness. I think one of the interesting things is that Day'Ron seems to not be afraid in the pick and roll. He's not afraid to finish an alley-oop. He's also got he's got some very good movement. He's got a bit of IQ, and you'd probably expect that considering he's played center, for who knows how many years. But he finds the right spots, and he seems to have good chemistry with Harden and Kyrie Irving and all the guards, basically. If he sees a bit of space, if he wants to protect the space, he will do that. He hasn't been afraid to do that. And he's actually proven to be reliable, amazingly. And you sort of say that with Kessler Edwards as well in terms of 3-point shooting. which also would come as a bit of a surprise, who also has a mid-range shot, but we're not talking about him. We're talking about Day'Ron. Yeah, he sort of offers, I think that's what really helps him reach his offensive ceiling. He's just got the IQ to get in the right places. Claxton has, to his credit, developed his offensive game, but it's taken a lot longer, and still he doesn't look as assertive in terms of his offensive game as Day'Ron does, and Clax has been in the league for 2 more years. What we've seen from Day'Ron, it's a very small sample size, and this could change, and, you know, obviously Day'Ron is a traditional big man. He can't shoot the ball for shit, but what he can offer us is a lot of energy. We've been absolutely bossed by centers for years and years, and I feel like it would be an absolute crime if we decided to offload this guy blindly, because simply he can't shoot, because he does all the intangibles well. He's played some very good defense alongside Kessler Edwards, especially when, you know, since KD has been out and those two have been in the rotation. They've been very good, and they've you know, they've held their ground defensively. Offensively, he's been awesome. You know, passing ability, I didn't know he had that. He's, you know, been very strong against, you know, seasoned NBA vets. Yeah, he's not afraid. He's not afraid. And Claxton, I mean, as much as he probably isn't afraid, I feel like his wiry frame sort of gives that perception. He plays sort of scared because these guys just boss him around. And Claxton's been decent on the offensive glass as well, but I just feel like Day'Ron has more aggressiveness, a bit more hunger in him. And it doesn't really help that Claxton's been out injured for a lot of his career, so he hasn't really got the continuity. He's out at the moment as well, which doesn't bode well for, you know, if he wants to stay on this Brooklyn Nets roster. I think he's got to deliver a little bit more. But that's not to say that he is a shit player, because he's not a shit player. He's a very good player, and I'd actually, like, I mean, we've been asking for this, you know? Seeing that last year defense was not one of our strong suits, I think it really helps that. But, you know, the fact that he doesn't space the floor, and he probably has less of a skill set than Day'Ron does, I mean, how much are we losing offensively that Claxton is giving us defensively? And there's times where Claxton is just unplayable because of how skinny and that he is. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if we trade Clax, but I also would be devastated, because I feel like having Claxton and Day'Ron being, you know, the big-bodied big, that, you know, will get down low, crash the glass. And then you've got Claxton, you know, if we're getting absolutely killed in switches because Day'Ron can't keep up, Claxton will come in, and then, you know, that'll basically remove all these defensive flaws that are a part of our team. And that's, I mean, that's me looking in the long term. In the short term, in terms of winning a championship, are those two bigs the answer? Probably not, because we have Aldridge as well, who is gifted offensively. So it's really, I mean, I feel like Day'Ron just has a little bit more range in what he can do, but Claxton also is equally capable of doing a lot of things. So basically, I've talked for about 15 minutes, and we've ended basically how we started. I don't know who's the better player, but you know, there's a case to make for both. So if you enjoyed this video, drop a like on it, subscribe, but that's going to be it. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.